Hello and welcome to another of Wargame Red Dragon with Czar Peppers. Now, if you'll remember a while ago, I did an experiment by using real life, doing a match using real life Soviet military tactics that they would have employed during the Cold War. Now, last time I did it against a Warsaw Pact deck, which was sort of by accident. I meant to do NATO, but this time I'm doing it against a NATO deck, and I think I've perfected the idea a little bit better. So we're going to take a look at this replay of a match that I did the other day. It's just against a computer. Now, what I like to sort of evolve this idea eventually by first looking at the Warsaw Pact tactics and then next looking at NATO tactics, and possibly one day if I could find somebody who'd be willing to try out a match against somebody using NATO tactics and me, or well, I could be NATO or Warsaw Pact, but pitting the two against each other, and I think that would be an interesting experiment. But this is stage 2 and working my way up to that point. Another person sent me a link to an interesting collection of decks that were actually based on real military sections or whatever you would call them. And I might employ that in the future and take a look at that. But first, let's just start this up. Okay, for those of you who haven't seen the last video, I should explain the tactic that the Soviets would have used in the event of a conflict between them and the NATO countries. Basically, the first stage of the assault will be a massive artillery barrage on enemy positions, and the primary focus of that artillery assault would be to disable and disman their anti-tank weapons, because once that artillery barrage ceases, the first wave will be tanks rolling up, moving, firing on the move. Their main role is suppressing fire for the infantry fighting vehicles filled with infantry that are behind them. Now, what I've done is I've just gone relatively simple and used a lot of T-72As stretched out as far as I could, with anti-air defenses strewn throughout to defend against, well, mainly these dastardly AH-64D longbow scout helicopters. So they go in, moving, firing on the move, and then coming up behind them are the infantry. They move up in their infantry fighting vehicles until they get around 500 to 200 yards from the enemy positions, at which point they dismount and move up alongside their infantry fighting vehicles. Their infantry fighting vehicles, in this case being a collection of BMP-1s with their 76mm gun, and BMP-2s, BMD-2s, the infantry fighting vehicles of the Soviet Airborne Divisions, or VDV, with their 30 or 20 millimeter autocannons, I don't remember. I've also put a few BMP-Ts throughout to give them a little bit more suppressing fire. And in the back here, I have all the artillery that will fire before them. Now, somebody in the comments brought up a good point about using smoke. So what I'm going to do is hit them with an artillery barrage, and then once the tanks begin to get close, I'll switch that to a smoke screen. Now, in this match, I'm not going to be focusing too much on Alpha and Foxtrot. I will send little squads over there to try and keep them out, but my primary focus is just going to be driving right through the middle and getting here as fast as I can. Now, the goal of the first wave was always not to secure enemy positions. They basically just go through them and continue on, while waves coming afterwards would then take out any pockets of resistance and capture those positions. So this is representative of that first wave. So let's get it started. So first, I'm going to be sending in all the T-72s. Like I said before, they're all the same kind. So mainly because I found when I mixed in the more expensive ones, they went at different speeds. So I used all of the same. So they went up at the same speed and more or less kept their positions, their line. This time I'm actually sending in supplies because that was a problem I had last time. I forgot to put up supplies. So, and I'm not moving up the BMPs and stuff for a little bit because they're quite a bit faster. They'll catch up with the tanks. Now over here we have the American deck. It's a NORAD deck of mine that I picked. A combination of American and Canadian forces that are going to be moving up into this area as the T-72s. Now the one really obnoxious thing I have to deal with is my middle mouse button has stopped working, so I can't really do much cool cinematic shots because I can only look at it at one direction, which is really obnoxious because this is a fairly expensive mouse. Okay, now we have the first artillery barrage coming in, going for, I believe I mainly put it on this road because I knew they'd be all be coming down this road. Now the T-72s are now engaging. We have the longbow, that's going to be a big threat, but we do have our anti-air coming up. Hopefully that'll be able to take that out relatively quickly. Moving up the infantry now, they're coming up behind the T-72As. This force of Abrams infantry is... Now you'll note that these tanks are firing on the move. I'm not stopping them to fire, they're firing on the move, so they keep moving forward, and they're a little bit harder to hit. We've got a Bison over here that's being taken out by this Afghansky. And now all of the Abrams have been taken out. However, I have lost a significant number of T-72s here as they move forward. The infantry is still coming up behind. I have this little group heading over here just to keep them out of it. Now the town, the infantry are going to be dismounting about 200 yards from this town to take this town. T-72s are going to go straight through and take up positions just along this ridge. And that attack seems to have done pretty well. Pretty much all of the NORAD forces have been taken out. Here comes the smoke barrage, giving them a little bit of cover as they advance. And some of these infantry should be dismounting soon. There we go. The infantry dismounting, heading up to the town alongside their IFVs. We have a combination of Motostrotsky and VDV forces here. Longbow causing some problems because my anti-air has sort of lagged behind a little bit, unfortunately. So they're going to do a bit of damage on my T-72s. IFVs moving up through the town now. We have another wave of Abrams coming up, along with some more infantry. Looks like we had some special forces in there as well. Stuff is happening there, not really important. Now we have our second wave of infantry, which should be dismounting any second now. Any second now. Now we have our second artillery barrage that's focusing on this town and sort of this line right here before these guys move up into that area. Fortunately, I'm kind of artillerizing my own tanks right now. Now the main attribute to this strategy is to keep everybody moving up. These guys are sort of going to hold their positions here, but the guys on the right flank are going to continue to move up into this forest, hopefully to be able to do a flanking maneuver on all these forces. Now we do have, these guys are running into some problems, but we do have infantry coming into that town, and another smoke screen is coming down to give these guys a little bit of cover as these Motostrotsky and VDVs slowly make their way up to the town, dismounting from their IFVs and coming up on foot. Hopefully they'll be able to deal with this plethora of Abrams that we have here. As you can see, we have these guys on the right flank coming in on their, well, left flank, I guess. Smoke screen working pretty well here. Infantry coming in, taking up positions in the town. These guys are doing a good job of keeping them out of there. I've now secured Delta. This anti-air is running into a bit of a problem. Let's zoom in on the action here. So this is a really effective smoke screen that I've put up. I've got a lot of artillery pieces. I've got like 2, 4, 6, 8 artillery pieces that are firing. And they're soon going to stop smoking that area and putting down fire in this area. These infantry, Motoskrautsky, are moving up through the forests. And the tanks have moved up to over here, and I've started to hold positions there because I can't really go much further. And I figured I'd keep them there while these guys can move up on the right flank. You know, these BMPTs are such wonderful vehicles with that automatic grenade launcher, and I believe it has a 100mm gun on it. Got a large force of 40 Canadian rifles moving up here. Now being engaged by my VDV and Motoskrautsky, which are significantly outnumbered, but hopefully the BMP-1 with its 76mm gun will help out quite a bit. Now my artillery is coming in, firing on the positions just in front of my area, although these guys are sort of caught in the line of fire of that artillery at the moment. So, you know, this one went pretty well. I mean, they've captured this. I believe I'm setting up a few T-72s to route them out of Foxtrot as I move into Echo. They have Alpha right now. Eventually I send these guys in to take out that command jeep or whatever it is. VDV and Motoskrautsky's taking up positions in this town. And at the moment, they're sort of holding their positions. Alright, so we've got our next artillery barrage coming in slightly more forward than the previous one, hitting this town right here. These guys are moving up here. Fortunately, they're being engaged by that command Abrams. However, we have two T-72As, so that'll hopefully take that out. After this barrage, I will do another smoke screen, and I'll have these infantry and remaining T-72s move up into this area of houses. These guys, the two T-72s, have assumably taken out that Abrams and are moving up into the forest to flank the town and also cut off their supplies up here. Still have artillery coming in, trying to hit that Abrams and that infantry. I'm not sure, but it's probably the T-72 that took out the Abrams. I doubt it was the BMP-1. And here comes the smoke. And then now we have the infantry moving up through the smoke into this town here. While these guys, the remaining T-72s on the right flank, and infantry and IFVs move in to flank the town from the right. Now, at this point, they don't have a command in Echo, so they can no longer bring in new forces. And I've routed them out of Foxtrot with these 3 T-72As. Forces moving up through the smoke. Smoke rounds still coming down. So all in all, I think this was it was a lot cleaner, I think, than my last attempt at doing this. And the use of smoke, I think, made a pretty big difference. And the ultimate strategy, I think, worked pretty well, and that was to take a large line of forces and keep moving them up without stopping until I've captured all of the territory. Of course, once it got up around here, the clean line sort of disintegrated, but overall, they still, we had the tanks moving up first, infantry coming up behind, good use of advancing artillery. We do have a few remaining forces trying to cause problems in Foxtrot, but 5 riflemen aren't going to do much against 3 T-72s. And the infantry have secured this town. So, all in all, this was a pretty successful run. And Next, we'll be moving on to Stage 3 of the Realistic Wargame Strategy Series, where we take a look at NATO tactics. Now, if anybody has some good resources on the information about NATO tactics during the Cold War era, please put it in the comments, because I'd like to give it a read. I have a few other sources, but as many sources as I can get would be appreciated. Now, there are two factors that I didn't really use in this experiment, which was air power, which obviously would probably play a pretty big role in an advance during the Cold War, and also I didn't use much helicopters. However, the strength, it's interesting during the Cold War is throughout, the Americans usually had a pretty strong hold on air supremacy, but while the Russians, or the Soviets, I was sort of a pet peeve of mine when people refer to as the Soviet Union as Russia, because obviously it was a collection of a great many countries that aren't acknowledged when you just say Russia. But they developed very good anti-air defenses to deal with the American air supremacy, which was probably a bit cheaper than developing don't get me wrong, they had some very good fighters and bombers, but they also have a very big strength in anti-aircraft defenses. So that was part 2 of this experiment, and I hope to do some more in the future. By the way, if you're interested in my small channel, I've set up a Patreon page, and I would greatly appreciate it for any kind of support you guys may be able to give, even if it's only $1 or $2, because, with 1,000 subscribers, everybody, not that I'm asking everybody, if you don't want it, that's perfectly fine. I'll keep making videos, but this is kind of due to certain circumstances. I'm kind of broke, so any kind of help would be appreciated. So until next time, and our NATO video, so long. Look, it's a truck. It's coming in. What is that? Probably supplies. Lots of supplies.